To the outside world, South Korea is a futuristic beacon of neon lights and pop culture. But locals know that beneath the polished concrete, something older and darker still lingers. There are places in Korea where the modernization stops and the nightmares begin. Cracks in the system where people fall through and are never seen again. Tonight, we are peeling back the layers of South Korea's history to look at 3 cases that defy explanation. These are 3 Korean mysteries that were closed without ever being truly solved. Number 1. Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital.
All right, okay, we're here. Cool. Okay, there's a little hut right there. I think we're at the back door. Cool. Super cool. Wendy, if we have to stay here overnight, would you do it? You're right, this place is quite scary. Go up or down? Should we go in there? I think it's for the movie. I took it down for the movie, that's why. Oh, check that out. So much graffiti.
Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital was built in 1961 in Gwangju, Gyeonggi Province, about 40 kilometers from Seoul. It operated for decades as a private mental health facility, treating patients away from the rapidly growing city. For most of its life, it was unremarkable. That changed in the mid-1990s when the hospital suddenly shut its doors. There was no official closure notice on the matter. Locals simply woke up one day to find the hospital abandoned. Later, government and property records would claim the hospital closed because of financial disputes between the owner and the local government, along with severe sewage and plumbing failures that made the building legally unusable. But these records never explained everything people saw inside. When urban explorers began entering Gonjiam in the 2000s, they found something strange. Hospital beds still in place, patient charts left behind, doors sealed from the outside, and treatment rooms frozen in time. People were talking about 3 high school girls who went to explore the abandoned asylum. They were found unconscious, but after some days 2 of them woke up and, according to the story, what they saw inside was so terrifying they went insane. And a couple of days later, 2 of them would self-delete, while the other would be in a coma as recent as today. Some claimed that patients had been locked in their rooms when the hospital shut down. Others said the director disappeared suddenly, vanishing without a trace, maybe fearing being punished for doing unspeakable things to the patients. None of this was ever officially proven, but no full investigation was ever released either. Over the next 20 years, Gonjiam became one of the most infamous abandoned locations in South Korea. It was featured on Korean TV, paranormal blogs, and urban exploration channels. Visitors reported hearing voices, footsteps, and doors slamming in a building that should have been empty. Then, in 2018, the hospital was demolished, the land was cleared for redevelopment, and Gonjiam was physically erased. That demolition created a new problem. With the building gone, no further forensic examination was possible. What remained were only photographs, videos, and stories, many of them conflicting. Some say Gonjiam was simply a decaying hospital, misinterpreted by fear. Others believe it became something else after it was abandoned, a place where real suffering left a psychological scar so deep that people could still feel it decades later. Although Gonjiam no longer exists on any map, its reputation still exists, caught somewhere between documented history and something far harder to explain. Why was the hospital really abandoned so suddenly in 1996? Was it simply financial collapse? Or was something inside those walls becoming too dangerous to keep hidden?
Thank you. Thank this.
Number 2. The Frog Boys. On March 26, 1991, 5 boys left their homes in Dalseo District, Daegu, South Korea. Their names were Kim Jong-sik, Kim Young-ju, Park Chan-in, Woo Cheol-won, and Lee Sang-ho. They were between 9 and 13 years old. They told their families they were going to Mount Warryong, a low mountain just outside the city, to catch frogs and salamanders in a small stream. It was a normal after-school activity. The mountain was familiar to the locals and not considered dangerous. They were supposed to be home before dark, but they never returned. By the next day, one of the largest missing person searches in South Korean history had begun. Police, soldiers, firefighters, and civilian volunteers combed Mount Warryong repeatedly. Helicopters scanned the hillsides and search dogs were deployed. Even military units searched parts of the mountain because of nearby training zones. Over the years, hundreds of thousands of people participated in the search, but nothing was found. For more than 11 years, the Frog Boys remained missing. Then, on September the 26th, 2002, a hiker discovered human bones on a hillside of Mount Warryong. DNA testing confirmed that the remains belonged to all 5 missing boys. But what investigators found created more questions than it solved. The bones were located in a shallow depression on a slope that had been searched multiple times during the original investigation. The remains were not scattered across the mountain as if the boys had become lost. They were found close together in the same small area. Some clothing was missing and items were still present. But the most disturbing part of all was the skulls. Forensic examiners reported that at least some of the boys had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, injuries that were not consistent with an accidental fall. This suggested that someone or something had attacked the boys. Despite this, the official cause of death was ruled undetermined. No suspect was ever identified. Authorities have never given any explanation for how 5 children could be killed in one place, left on a mountain, and remain undiscovered for over a decade. When their bones were finally uncovered in 2002, the clock was already running out. Under Korean law at the time, prosecutors had only until 2006 to identify and charge whoever had killed them. Even if a suspect were later identified, no one could be prosecuted, and the case was closed. Today, Mount Warryong is still there, but beneath the trees and trails lies one of South Korea's most disturbing unanswered questions. Who, or what, killed the Frog Boys? And how did their bodies remain hidden in plain sight for 11 years, even after a meticulous search of every inch around Mount Warryong?
Had much choice but to accept the cards they were dealt. At least now, finally, the parents could put their children to rest. After their funerals, the parents had the remains cremated, then scattered them in a united ceremony at Nagong River. Park Jeon-so, Chin-yin's dad, spoke to the media about why they decided to do this. They died together, so we wanted them to play together in the afterlife. The truth about what
Number 3. Sampoong Mall collapse. In the afternoon of June 29, 1995, in the wealthy Seocho district of Seoul, one of the largest department stores in South Korea collapsed. The Sampoong department store, a 5-story concrete building filled with shoppers and employees, suddenly gave way. In less than 20 seconds, the structure folded in on itself. 502 people were killed, and more than 900 were injured. It remains the deadliest peacetime structural disaster in South Korean history. Immediately after the building fell, rescue operations began. Firefighters, soldiers, and volunteers worked around the clock, listening for voices in the wreckage. Rescue operations continued for about 17 days, with cranes, cables, and specialized equipment brought in to reach survivors trapped deep under the rubble. and some people were still alive and pulled out even late in the process. Then something unsettling began to happen. Families of victims reported receiving phone calls from relatives who had already been declared dead. Some said they heard faint breathing on the line. Others claimed their loved ones begged for help before the call dropped. Rescue workers, too, reported hearing tapping, crying, and voices coming from deep inside the rubble, even in areas that had already been searched. Yet when teams dug toward the sounds, there was often nothing there. As the days passed, the official death toll and missing person list failed to align. Some names appeared on one list, but not the other. Some families insisted their relatives were still alive beneath the debris. Then demolition began. Large machinery was brought in to clear the site, even as some families protested that people might still be trapped inside. To this day, not all of the missing were ever officially accounted for. Former employees and nearby shop workers later spoke about something strange in the days leading up to June 29th. They claimed that children inside the department store had reported seeing bloody figures behind the staff, standing silently near escalators and dressing rooms. Some said the children described faces streaked with red, staring through the mirrors. These accounts were dismissed as lively imagination. In the early 2000s, the site where the department store once stood was sold and redeveloped into a luxury apartment complex called Accra Vista, towering glass and concrete, rising directly from the footprint of one of Korea's worst disasters. Hundreds of people now live where more than 500 died. A memorial to the victims was built elsewhere, in Yangjae Citizens Forest, leaving the actual site of the collapse to quietly disappear beneath modern life. But the past did not vanish so easily. Local residents and internet threads claimed Accra Vista is haunted because of its tragic history. Stories circulated of strange noises, uneasy dreams, and an overwhelming feeling of presence in certain apartments, especially those closest to where the department store's central atrium had once been. The video you're going to watch now is a South Korean resident who asked a shop owner about the haunting rumors.
So I just spoke with somebody who's been working here, having a business here for 17 years. So it's been quite a while since the incident. And people who are older will remember that this is the site of the Sampoong department store, but a lot of people have forgotten. And I asked if she had seen any ghosts or had any kind of incidents or heard of any incidents like that. And she said that personally, she had an incident where somebody was claiming that they were hearing sounds from the lower floor, but when they went to go check, there was nothing that would be making that sound. And then she says here and there people have claimed that they've seen something or another, but in general, I mean, I think the vibe is, at least in this shopping area, I think maybe because there's so much energies here, it feels fine. I will say that when I did, see actual units where people would be living, that had a creepy vibe. But in general, it's fine. And I think if you look at the construction, they did it on purpose to be very, very, very robust.
Lee Jun, the owner of Sampoong department store, and his son Lee Han-sang were convicted of criminal negligence. Lee Jun was sentenced to 10 years in prison, while his son received 7 years. Most victims' families believe the punishment was far too light for 502 deaths. Let alone there are still a couple of unanswered questions. Who decided to end the rescue while people were still listed as missing? And why was speed prioritized over certainty? Thank you very much for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. May the victims of the cases on today's episode finally rest in peace.